Okay guys, so we're back at the Kingdom. We're joined by Tomo. Thanks for joining us, pal.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys. Great.
So, let's just run over some of the stuff. Yesterday we had a really in-depth PK with all the guys, a little overview of kind of sim as a concept, and obviously breaking down some of the things that visually, people will kind of get the, the wow factor when they see it. But I think yesterday breaking down some concepts. I love the way you laid that out yesterday. You broke down aerodynamics first, then you broke down stability and speed, and then how you kind of couple that all together, and that's how we ended up where we are today.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is fantastic. Let's talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the whole sim concept is around this new shape of the driver. And by going to a completely new, radically different shape mainly on the bottom of the club, we're able to unlock a bunch of performance, and mainly through two mechanisms. One is obviously aerodynamics, and that's most visible obviously on the sole here with this asymmetric sole, and that's really about where the club is traveling in the downswing and how it's rotating from an open position into a square position at impact, and that's really what that's doing. Obviously on the crown too, there's a lot of other subtle aerodynamic treatments. For example, this back of this crown is a lot higher than typical drivers. Usually they dip down more. That helps the air stay attached across the crown of the driver more. And
are we going back to sort of dual crown back 10, 12 years ago when we had some burner product that had very, I'm thinking back to sort of super fast TP that had a very high crown for good aerodynamics.
So what's interesting about that is those designs were based on the same concept of keeping the airflow attached.
Sure.
Now what's changed since then is that our understanding of the aerodynamics is a lot more refined than what it was. We didn't have the modeling, we didn't have wind tunnel use back then. So we had some general ideas of, hey, you don't want to disrupt airflow coming over here too quickly, which is why the early crowns are really poofed up.
Yeah, they really were.
What we've discovered is because the club is essentially kind of de-lofted in the downswing, this leading edge is not as important as what's happening at the back, right? So now you'll see a slightly different shape. In the old days, it was more poofy at the front, and it still went down at the back.
Quite a steep fall.
But these ones are now flatter, and they don't dip down as much in the back. And that is really for the air to stay attached to the crown as long as possible before it separates, hopefully at the trailing edge here. So that's really the aerodynamic piece of this. And then the other part of it is how do we deliver all that speed with good forgiveness and stability, right? And that's where we have this inertia generator feature here, and while we have all the weight positioned way at the extreme back of the club. Typically those weights would be more inboard and maybe not as low, but this is obviously as low as we can put it and as far back as we can put it. And that's going to give you stability. And like what you were saying, we're trying to basically decouple and break that trade-off between having a forgiving driver and having a fast driver.
Yeah, and that's always the engineering difficulty is you want both. You want speed, you want stability, you want aerodynamics, and trying to obviously come up with the formula for that is a hugely difficult thing.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so that's again, that was the underlying concept of this whole idea of the sim product.
I love the idea and talking about this sort of asymmetric design at the back here and talking about as the club is on its journey down into impact and the disruption of airflow and kind of how that would be affected on the back here, and how there's so much thought to that, because I think that'll be one of the first things people see when they see that. They go, why is it angled towards the toe? Is that fade bias? Is that I think that might be where some people's minds might go with that.
Yeah, so exactly. So one of the things obviously is we don't want to make a fade bias, obviously. So the CG is very neutral on the sim and the sim max, and actually the max D driver, the draw one, has a more heel bias CG even. So it's really not about that, but you're right. It is all about the aerodynamics as the club is moving through space and the downswing. And what we've done in our aerodynamic analysis is trying to figure out where is the speed generated in your swing. You're not generating at the very top, and by the time you get to the ball, it's too late. So it's that kind of like that last 3 feet or so of club travel before the ball is when you're really accelerating hard and building up ultimately to deliver the club as fast as possible at impact. And so the club has to work in all those orientations as it's going from an open position, now this is a left-handed club, to a square position. And that's really what the challenge is and why this is at an angle that it is at.
What did you think yesterday? I mean, I almost think it's more important what you thought, because that was the first time you've sat through a session like that.
Yeah, yesterday. It is actually. It's true.
So we've sat through those and kind of been in those before, so it's nice to see. But I want to hear what you thought.
I think all of it made sort of technical sense to me. I didn't find it to be overly complicated. I get. I think aerodynamics for most people who are consumers, I don't think that has ever looked significant enough on a club to go, I actually believe that's making me swing faster. So that's probably my reaction was, I can see that, and then I thought the way it was angled, a little bold on your part probably to go that way, because it's kind of like, I'm sure you had to deal with people going, oh, it's kind of crooked. But
does it look weird? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the reality is, like, we were sitting in the session and everyone did the same thing. You set it down and you go, oh, no, it looks like every driver that you've made recently. It looks good and it's not a problem. So no, I thought it was really good. I think the weight track probably being a little simpler made sense to me. And I was excited, honestly, to hear that you had probably prioritized stability in MOI.
Yeah, absolutely we have,
I just think that it's hard to think of a golfer that's not good for at this point.
Absolutely, right? And I think that's what we're seeing more and more too, is this, especially when it's no longer a trade-off with spin. You know, like in the old days, it was always like, hey, if you want a forgiving club, well, it's going to spin more, not go as far. But if you can get both, why wouldn't you want both, right?
Exactly.
Yesterday during the session, there was a slide that kind of gave some drivers of the past, and it showed SLDR and it showed some aero burner stuff, and the discussion about that being a little bit, obviously the CG being so low and back, so you can use a little bit more loft because you will get a little bit less sort of spin and that sort of thing. So to go to that type of a driver, but has the stability with that much, you know, weight on the back is really exciting. We just tested it. We actually just tested it prior, and it's exactly what we saw, was that we were, you know, able to decouple launch and spin more than we really ever have before.
I agree with that. My launch angle was way high, at least a degree and a half more than usual, but the spin rates were about the same.
And it was how similar they stayed. How
they were
consistent. The standard deviation was so tight on those spin rates, which you don't want any surprises whether you catch them high, low. You talked about you know, Tiger, and you know, if he starts to see that sort of stuff, and you know, if he sees that spin rate drop too much, he starts to panic a little bit.
Exactly. And you know, part of the things that you know, we don't always talk about it that much, but you know, a big effort on this club, obviously, you know, the visible forgiveness that you see in this is the weight at the back. But the part that we don't really talk about is how we design the face, because a lot of it is sort of behind the scenes. And one of the things that we changed, and one of the things I'm really glad to hear you mention, is that the spin is consistent. And there's two reasons for that. One is the speed pocket that's now a through slot is going to reduce spin on low face hits. So typically that you catch it a little bit low, you see that spin rate go way up, right? You're not going to see that as much on this driver. And the other thing is, the way we actually position the inverted cone on the driver is actually a little bit off center on this driver. So that's not something we've done before, but we actually positioned it a little bit off center to improve speed, low heel and high toe. So it's actually along the axis where you tend to miss it, we've actually optimized it for that more. So you're going to see just a more consistent result overall.
I mean, it's good to hear. I think if anything I struggled with last year is being a lower spin player, is if I caught M5 a little high in the head, I couldn't retain enough spin. And I'm sure I had a mix of strikes. We probably hit about 15 shots today. None of them dipped below, 1900 at worst. So it's a good improvement.
Great to hear, Awesome.
I mean, just going into sort of the strike pattern analysis, and obviously how twist face evolved from that. Now inverted cone is going along.
Exactly.
The same thing. It's nice to see technologies being sort of compounded on top of one another.
Absolutely right. And you're right. So the twist face data, when we launched twist face, we only used it to decide curvature. We didn't really design the sweet spot to correspond to that, because it was wasn't enough time. But that's something we've been able to incorporate now. Is hey, we know where people hit it on the face. Let's optimize both speed and forgiveness for those places, and sort of deprioritize other places. You know, having good speed in the high heel or the low toe is not as important.
Lower priority, I can
It's a low priority. Not like we want to make it bad here, but it's not as important as the key places where people hit it.
Is the twist face shaping the same as last year?
It is.
Because I'm finding it addressed, I maybe noticed it a bit less. Maybe that's the paint.
Well, what's interesting about it, so honestly, one of the biggest things of seeing twist face is how we mask it at the top.
That must be why.
I can make it really visible for you or hide it completely.
Based on this paint line.
Exactly. So what we do, for example, for Tiger is he doesn't like to see it. So we paint his driver really low in the toe.
Really?
That line comes down further in it, so it looks a little bit more shut and right in the toe area.
That's cool.
So we've done that for Tiger in the past. I don't know if we're going to do it on this or not. He hasn't really fully tested it yet, so I don't really know where we're going to land. And the other thing is, just in terms of the bulge and roll, that's actually very slightly different on the drivers depending on the inertias of the heads. So even though the twist face sort of curvature remains the same, the underlying bulge and roll may vary slightly on the heads.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And obviously, we've got progressive face size. We've got sim into max D. We're getting progressively larger in surface as we go towards the D.
And so really the thinking there is knowing who your target user is for each club, right? So there is some advantages with going a little smaller on the face, like on the sim driver, both from an aerodynamic standpoint and just honestly from a look standpoint for some players as well. They don't want to see like a massive face. And also, a slightly smaller face means less mass in the face, and that's weight you can put elsewhere, either in the track or make it more forgiving.
That makes sense.
So that's another thing. And but for the Max and the Max D, we've kind of looked at that again. That strike pattern for that target player is just a little wider, right, than this player. Scattered. And so we need to give that player a little bit more face, just to have their worst shots be a little better. You know? So that's kind of the goal there.
Cool.
Why don't we hit a couple?
Sure.
We'd love to get kind of Tomo's thoughts as we work through a couple on the TrackMan here.
Okay, absolutely.
We're still on.
Yeah, still good.
114. It's always a drama before the numbers come up on the screen.
No,
the flight looked
anticipation.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's exactly what we saw earlier on. Yeah. It's exactly the same
exact
thing.
flight.
Yeah. Your 13.5 launch, 2200.
I don't think I've
basically
had,
300 carry.
I haven't had 13 launch with low spin on any driver that I can think of in a while.
What you haven't had with any Taylormade driver in the past that you've ever tested is so much protection against the right side.
Yes.
So look at that, just the way you're mapping that there. So you're able to retain launch, spin, speed, and direction down the left side.
Yeah.
Without opening the face crazy, like we've really just gone, this is neutral face, and just a little bit of toe weight. Usually we've opened them in the past.
Opened them a little bit, yeah.
It looks
to avoid the right side, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
How's that?
Looks really good. It's the same as the last one. Just it looked like I probably caught it a little bit better on the face, a little higher.
Similar line, just a little further.
A couple miles an hour faster, 300 carry. I mean, it's almost a carbon copy of the last shot.
Look at it. So it's right. It's actually right on top. It's right next to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's your dots are crazy close together. I mean, that's beautiful. Yeah. Nice.
So seeing all that stuff coming together, and obviously protection on shape, and seeing the consistency. It's funny, you know, we done the initial test and we were really impressed with how tight the numbers were.
Yeah.
You've just had a 20-minute break.
Yeah.
Standing still in the cold.
Went straight back in there, and you've just kicked straight back into gear.
Replicated the numbers again.
It's very nice to see. Yeah. I mean, the impact-wise, it's noticeably more stable than last year. I think just from the way impact feels.
Sure. Yeah.
So, it would seem that this is definitely making a big difference back there.
Yeah, and really, like if you wanted this kind of stability in an M5, you would have had to put all the weights back.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then it would have spun more.
Well, you talked about that.
That's right.
Where you saw the guys starting to go with some
that,
of their setups, Rory and John Ram.
Exactly, and those guys.
They pretty much all did it, haven't they?
They all did,
Brooks did it too.
Brooks did it too. Brooks is all the way back on his weights, and that's what this is going to be great for those guys, because they're getting that, you know, forgiveness built in, and they can still move the weights heel toe for draw fade. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because once you're back, you really have nowhere to go. You know, in terms of that. So
this made a big difference.
It really did, didn't it?
Are those the dots from earlier?
So the two that crossed the line were pre.
When you had your weight in the middle.
He moved it, and then none have done it since.
Yeah.
It's quite.
And that's honestly a sort of why we still have a driver with the weight in it, is because we know that we can manipulate the flight when you need it for that better player.
It still amazes me that makes so much difference. It really does.
Yeah.
Just such an easy little thing to do.
You see little subtle things, moving the mass a little bit more behind the strike location will just spike your ball speed just a little bit and stabilize the whole setup. So
absolutely, very cool.
Love it. Okay, guys. Obviously you can tell how impressed we are with it. I mean, we can't wait to get it back in the studio and do more testing with it and kind of dive a little deeper. Obviously, we've not spent much time with Max yet, so
I'm looking forward to doing that as well.
More to come. So this has been a great initial look at it. Tomo, thanks so much for
your
your help.
I appreciate it.
The info over the last couple of days is going to be huge for us to take back and be able to obviously pass that on
to customers.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Lovely. Thanks, guys. You do a great job.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon, guys.